Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Kingston Borough Business Top Tips session for the morning. As I've explained to our attendees here, I'm just going to go through some sort of top tips and some sort of questions which we've been asked over the last couple of years. And then I will ask the floor if they've got any particular questions, which I will hopefully try and answer. I will start with, and some of this information is on the website, but it's always quite good to actually hear it from the horse's mouth. I'll start with the very basic, is who actually judges these awards. We tend to have a lot of our sponsors, and then we kind of get sort of people from different areas of Kingston life who will come on as a judge. Every category is judged by 3 separate judges, and they are 3 independent judges. They will look at any submission separately, they will score it separately, and then we come to a judging day, which is on December the 5th, where they will assess the scores together in a big roundtable session. That is one of the most challenging and enjoyable parts of this whole program. The reason why it's challenging is that you do get quite different views from the judges. So they may score something, and between the 3 of them, one will say yay, one will say no. There have been some existential crisis questions, which is very challenging, but it's very what it does prove is that these judges put a lot of effort into this, and there's a lot of care and diligence on each of the submissions. So basically the portal adds up their scores, and then the judges come together, and then they assess, say, what the order is. So you will see fairly soon who the judges will be, but it is we do get relevant judges for each of these particular categories. That is particularly important. And if they do have any degree of conflict of interest, they have to flag it up. The scores are then sort of averaged up, so it doesn't diminish your score if a judge says, I do know this person. But it is actually a very thorough process with the judging. One of the big questions is, does my business need to be registered in the borough? We try to keep this as open as possible, but obviously this is a Kingston Borough Business Awards. So the terminology is essentially, in order to be eligible to enter the awards, the company should be based or primarily doing business within the Royal Borough of Kingston upon Thames. And by primarily doing business, it's not limited to activities such as contributing directly to the growth of the borough, being a key members of the Kingston business community, delivering local services or projects. But if there is that element of question mark on it, you will need to sort of say the reasons why are X, Y, and Z. We've tried to keep it as open as possible for people who do maybe work in, they're based in Twickenham. We have a number of businesses who are based in Twickenham, but they do a lot of work within Kingston. So we try to keep those businesses engaged with this. Do I need to be a member of the Chamber of Commerce to enter? Absolutely not. That is not a criteria. Is there a limit to the number of entries I can submit? There are some categories where actually businesses could possibly overlap. So I will say for Martin here, Martin Cook from Joltify, he may, for example, want to put something into an outstanding green business champion. They do recharging and solar panel work. So there may be a category like that for him. But equally, he may say, do you know, I do provide a great, excellent in customer experience. What we always say here, you guys have a limited amount of time. We appreciate this. So our recommendation is you top and tail your submission, that you can use the bulk of your work sort of your introduction and your end. There are always 4 questions for each of these categories, but you just tailor that middle bit to that particular category. Do not feel that you need to reinvent the wheel for every category you go into, but obviously try to put the weight of each of those submissions weighted into whether it is excellence in customer experience. You have to tell that story, but there's the bulk of it can be kind of topped and tailed a little bit. Just don't create really a whole lot of extra work by thinking I have to create something completely different for every submission. Is there a number? So the supporting materials that I can provide. If you do have videos, please do not add in the videos. Just put in a link, and the same for PDFs. Keep them under. I think it's a 5 meg file limit on that. The key date is November the 8th. And I think the deadline is for 11 p.m. that evening. And those are some of the basic things. Now, entry tips. Always assume, and I think most of you probably do this anyway naturally, but always assume that you're explaining what you do to somebody who has no familiarity with what you do. I think running your own business, and I run my own business, we tend to shortcut that bit. We kind of want to get on to, oh, this, and this. And we kind of assume that we're in a conversation with somebody who actually knows a little bit about what we do. Treat it as if it's somebody who has got no idea who you are. And by doing that, try to avoid jargon language. I think every profession has its little form of jargon. Keep the acronyms down to a minimum. But always remember, you're telling a story. So if you wanted to convince somebody, and a lot of this is about how to tell your story, you need to make it engaging. You need to make it very clear. What are the absolute benefits of coming to work with this business, and to show what the benefits you provided to your customers, or the sector that you're appealing to. So try to avoid jargon, avoid acronyms where best as possible. Client quotes and testimonials are always invaluable, purely because it's another voice. This isn't just you, this is another voice. So if you can get those in, it will really make a difference. When the judges look at a lot of the submissions, they are always surprised to think we had no idea this was going on. We didn't realize that. And I think it's trying to put your message in a way that people are thinking, I didn't know that. That's really interesting. So always keep that at the back of your mind, thinking, how can I just put a little twist on this to make this sound like, wow, we just didn't know this was going on, or I didn't know that. You can use facts, you can use statistics. Be mindful of statistics that you can kind of back them up. But they are always very useful to have. So quote real figures where you can, but always keep thinking this is a story. Link your aims and objectives to the results, and just keep thinking, somebody doesn't know me. What is the best way of really convincing them this is, wow, that's different? And I think those are really some of the very useful, some of the good top tips with this. I'm going to have a breather. I'm sure you deserve a breather as well. Are there any questions at this point? Just unmute yourself, wave your hand, or interject. Anything coming through? Ah, Yudari, thank you.
So my question is, I am very new to business, and all my clients are in the process of receiving the service, right? So it's not because of me, it's like either, so obviously I'm an accountant, I need people to say that they can engage with me, and these things can take long. It's not me, it's HMRC. I don't think I'll be able to finish any tax returns before the 11th of November, is it? The deadline, right?
It's the
So
8th,
I would.
8th of November, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So how would I get a testimonial?
How long have you been going again?
Well, to be honest, I think I probably started in June.
Oh, I thought you'd been
But
going for a wee bit
anyway,
longer.
you know what I mean. So I would probably have all these testimonials before before January, because that's when people want their returns done, yeah, and probably more by March. But now is an issue because, yeah, everything is work in progress.
Is there? I mean, yeah. And without knowing
I didn't mean to
your
start you. I think it's
no.
a
That's the whole point of this. That's the whole
maybe
point of
I
this.
have better thing. Like maybe I should apply next year. In that way, I'm like, operated for a year.
I think that there may be the case with that, simply because you may have more under your belt to be able to say, because even if you were, for example, the best startup, it does go back a particular period of time. It goes back to early 2022, I think. But yes, I think it depends on your relationship with your clients and your customers at the moment. Is even if you were to how you working with them, is to say, to date, is there anything that you could provide as an ongoing, the early part of the relationship? It's without really knowing your relationship with your customers and your clients, it's a little bit hard to see and to appreciate if they may be forthcoming with that. They may be say, yeah, I'm very happy. You could say, look, I'm entering these awards. Is there anything that you could say for the work which we've done so far? I would suggest that if you are comfortable with doing that, and again, it depends on your particular customers.
Well, I mean, would I want to ask that kind of favor this early on in the relationship, especially when I'm not even authorized yet, or if I'm not sure if they've cleared the money laundering checks or something? I think I probably wouldn't want to do that. So in that case, I think I'll wait till next year. You know what I mean? It could, but it's just put me in a weird position asking for referrals even before a piece of work is complete, or I know if they're good enough customers.
Yeah, I can understand that. Sometimes there's an element of you feel as if you might be jinxing something by asking for something a wee bit too early. But it depends which, I mean, we can talk more offline on this, because it just depends which category you are thinking of going into. But if it's been June, yeah, as I say, I'm happy to talk a little bit more offline on this, because they could be a different, depending on which category going into.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Yudari. Anybody else? Any further questions at this moment? No. I know there's a few digital folk here, and one thing I'd like to flag up on this is that the Best in Digital Communications, in particular, it is actually trying to be quite broad, in so much as that it's talking about showcasing creative ways individuals, agencies, or organizations are utilizing the digital landscape. So it does obviously include websites, social media, AI, or apps. So it is fairly broad, and it's to provide customers tangible communication impacts. So it is really, how are you using digital communications? It is fairly broad. It's not just about social media. We did have one question a couple of weeks ago saying, oh, it's just about social media. And I said, no, it's not actually. It's about how you use digital communications much broader than that. So even if it's for sort of digital disruption, it's how you're using the digital landscape. So whether that's relevant for you, Sonia and Steve, who I can just see on the screen, it's really how you're using that.
I
It's
do
broader
actually
than just
have
social
a
media.
question. Essentially, I'm undecided which category to enter. So there's what I would like to enter is about work that I've done with a client in e-commerce. And it's about Google advertising on Google Ads, which is not really communication and it's not really creative. But it's very
digital.
technical. It's very, you know, there's a lot of numbers and it's about user psychology. Why do people search for something? Why do they click on an ad or not? And why do they do something on the website or not once they land on the website? So I don't think communication is the right category.
But that's it. We always live and learn doing these awards, and you start the ball rolling, and then you suddenly think later on, was that the best title in the world? If you to again, this is the point about digital. That's why I mentioned digital communications. It's about the digital landscape. It is. So actually, what you've described would fit into that absolutely spot on. It would. It is about digital landscape. It's so there's so many different areas to the world of digital, but that would fit into it quite nicely.
Okay. Because I was thinking I was not thinking of that. I was thinking either of the freelancer sole trader and I'm a limited company. But then here again, it talks about using a creative approach. And this is not what I understand as creative. You know, it's not, you know, when I see it sponsored by Libo Media, which is about copywriting, and copywriting is a lot more creative than Google Ads. And the other one I was thinking is professional services, but then it feels a bit more larger firms rather than a company of
professional
one.
services. If I was I'm speaking to you now. I would say digital communications and the freelance and sole trader is absolutely right for you. I wouldn't go to professional services. That tends to be more into sort of more HR, legal, solicitors. Yeah. It's in a slightly different sphere. But equally, the thing, Sonia, is that there is elements of creativity because you're talking about creative. So it's how you want to define creativity for yourself. You're finding solutions, and that process is creative. That's the whole thing about what you're trying to do. There is that psychology. Now, it's creative isn't creating a piece of art or something or anything like that. It is the process of how you're thinking.
Okay.
So, yeah, just be mindful of that word creative. It's not an artistic venture. It's how you problem solve.
Okay. Great. Communications it is.
It sounds a very interesting project, and I think I'm sure at the end of it, there's discernible returns. There's a boom. There's a benefit for this.
Yeah, I find it very interesting, and it's about something new that Google brought out last year, and it was definitely about problem solving, understanding how it works and how to make it work for my client. So, yeah.
Interesting. I look forward to reading.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts or questions as we talk about this?
Forbes, which categories are the most, do you have the most participants?
Oh, that's a good question. It's interesting because we've got 5 new categories this year, so it'd be interesting to see how they pick up. I mean, so far they seem to be picking up quite well. I think generally, and say for the past, I would say that I'm just scanning through them all now. The excellence in professional services and excellence in customer experience. Namely, principally, that we all believe that we provide customer experience or customer service as it is formerly known. And a lot of us, we try to pride ourselves on that. So they tend to be quite, there's quite a few entries. But interestingly enough, last year, the winner for customer service, I think from the top of my head, was were Visiting Angels, which is a care service. And the runner-up was a business which was in the coffee sector, coffee provider. So you can get very contrasting businesses coming through. So it's, and the scale of it in terms of, yes, there's one which is a large organization to some which is just a couple who are working on their business. The size of the business is not actually relevant in any of these categories. It doesn't, just because an organization is bigger than a 1-person or 2-person, it's not about that. It is actually the contributions they're making and the innovations or the experiences which they're providing. I think this year, I wouldn't be surprised if the health and well-being proves to be quite popular. And so I'd say generally those 3 tend to have the greatest gravitational pull of all.
Right. And then how many people, how many companies are actually, I mean, can you remember top of your head how many actually went into those categories in terms of the number of companies, number of participants? I mean, are we talking like 100? Or are we talking like 10?
Oh no! I mean, we've done this for 2 years now. The first year we had 215 entries, but within that entries there could have been not duplications, but they may have entered a number of different categories. Last year we had 180 plus, and I would say from memory, and I'll go back and check, I would actually say for excellence in professional services and customer experience, we're talking around 24 to 27, I think.
Oh, okay, right. So in the sort of 20s, 30s, right, per category.
Yep. It's not completely lopsided that you've got, say, 80 in those 2 categories and the rest are like 2s and 3s. It's actually quite even. I'd say it's somewhere between, from the lowest category goes from about 8 up to 28 at the most.
I got it. Okay, thank you.
And another question, are the judges the same for all categories or do they differ?
No. So there's a pool of around 18 judges. So, for example, you mentioned about Lebu Media, who are doing the sole trader and freelancer. What we would then get is 2 other business owners or practitioners or folk in the business community who would be able to contribute to that. It's very important that there's a good balance between these judges. And so, for example, in the past with Time and Leisure, they've often contributed with the digital side of things. So we do try to make sure that there's a good knowledge of this particular area for each of these categories. But as I say, there are 3 independent people, and they all score it independently, and then they come together and see how the scores have added up. So each judge has around 3 categories to do. Keeps them very busy. But as I say, the judging day it's great. I love the phrase, "We didn't know this was going on in Kingston," and I think that's what really makes these, to me at least, so rewarding. Is that you hear these different stories and you just go, "Wow, we never knew that. That's brilliant." And there are some real surprises. In the best startup, there was an organization called Beats, which is a Hong Kong organization based in New Malden, and a lot of people just had no idea these things were going on. Any other thoughts? Martin, have you got any thoughts?
No, not really, to be honest, Forbes. It's just I think I'm going to be looking at which category to apply for, and you never know, maybe we'll be lucky enough to win a second one. But it won't be the best startup again. No, it's just
that might be a bit iffy.
No, I know. It's just making sure you or we, should I say, put in enough time and effort into that application to really put across why any of us want the award. I guess it's important to invest the time and, as you said, to put things in that maybe aren't always what we think should go into them, but actually can play a real contribution to the application.
Yeah, I think on that note, and it was actually quite interesting, we have actually asked people who have submitted their entries and became finalists or winners, how long did it actually take them to do? There's a wee bit of an element of how long's a piece of string, but I would say on average, and again, it depends how much of the information you do have at hand, the average came into around 3 to 4 hours, 3 to 5 hours to actually complete it. And the portal is very flexible. You can start it, you can leave it, you can come back. You don't have to do it all in one go. So there's a lot of flexibility with that. And until you sort of press the submit button, you can go backwards and forwards to it. And to be honest, even if you do submit something and about a week later you just go, "Oh, I've forgotten something," let us know, resubmit it, and we can look at the portal and adjust for that. Obviously, once the deadline has passed, that's the point of a deadline. We can't really change anything, but it is very flexible. So honestly, the average seems to be about 3 to 5 hours, just compiling the information in, putting together the text. And again, this is an interesting observation. There is some mileage, and it depends on your budgets and things like that. It is always worth maybe running something past a copywriter or somebody who you think, they can actually type, they can write these things quite well. So it can be an advantage, and it's a useful thing just to get somebody else to have a look at it and saying, does that tell the story? But again, sometimes I think we are the number of people I nudged last year, and when they actually did it, and thankfully 1 or 2 of them won, they're very modest. We're very modest borough, and I think people are saying, "Yeah, we do this, but we'll just keep it to ourselves." Just push that out a little bit, because honestly, there is a fantastic story in so many businesses and what people are doing. And so I would just say, don't be afraid of using the word of very successful. It went very well. obviously, don't go completely crazy, but just be positive, be really positive, because there are really good stories out there and some really interesting stories. And on the story front, there are word counts, which on the portal you can see where they actually are. So it makes it quite clear where you need to be. I think the longest word count is around 400, which is equivalent of basically an A4 side. So that's the fullest amount. So any other questions?
Yeah, can you remind us how many finalists there are in each category?
That's a good question, because I didn't actually say in the first place, actually, Sonia. They tend to be 4. Yeah, there's 4. And the hard part is having to be a secret squirrel until the actual awards night. So really, just to kind of wrap this up a wee bit, if there's no more questions, is when you do this, try to view it that you're talking to somebody that you've never met before, and you feel like, I really want this person to buy into what I'm selling and doing. So create that enthusiasm, that sense of urgency, that sort of, you're proud of this. Be proud of what you put in. Use real figures where you can. Get client quotes and testimonials where you can. You can include a little infographic charts or something which is graphically digestible. But just show that enthusiasm and tell that story and just say, do you know, this is why it really worked. And that will make a big difference. That will make a big difference. Okay. If there's nothing else, I will probably end the recording. Thank you very much for coming on. I hope that's helped a wee bit. If you do have any further questions, do not hesitate to get in contact with us. We look forward to seeing how you all get on. And of course, I'll have to keep my mouth shut. I won't be able to say anything.
Thanks very much, Forbes.
Yeah, cheers, Forbes.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you.
Thanks.
Nice to
Take
see
care.
you all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Forbes.